One of the British companies controlled by Mogilevich was Aragon Limited, an offshore, off-the-shelf Channel Islands number with worldwide money laundering connections. Aragon was owned by YBM Magnex, and in turn it owned Mogilevich's black and white sex club in Prague.
Aragon was probably the principal of a number of front companies used by Mogilevich, we believe, to launder money that was the proceeds of extortion, arms trafficking, probably prostitution as well. Aragon is one of a number of companies that were used to get this money into the mainstream of commerce, to disguise it, to make it legitimate.
Why did you set up companies in the Channel Islands?
The problem was that I didn't know any other islands. When they taught us geography at school, I was sick that day.
What made you choose that location?
I didn't choose it. I bought an off-the-shelf company.
And it happened to be an offshore company?
No, I wanted an offshore company.
Why?
To pay less taxes.
Did you try to launder any money through that company?
No, of course not.
Operation Sword established that over £30 million had passed through various accounts in London in a 3-year period. £2 million from Aragon, found at the Royal Bank of Scotland, originated from dubious sources in Russia. Warrants of arrest for conspiracy to handle stolen goods were obtained against Mogilevich, but then everything went wrong. Operation Sword was finally blunted here in Moscow when the Russian police failed to deliver evidence to Scotland Yard that the money had emanated from criminal activities, that it was dirty money. So the investigation collapsed, allegations were withdrawn, compensation was paid. But shortly afterwards, Mr. Mogilevich received a polite letter from the Home Office telling him his presence was no longer welcome in the United Kingdom, and he remains persona non grata to this day. But in Russia, he still gets the VIP treatment and is rarely without a bodyguard who chauffeurs him in his £200,000 armour-plated bomb-proof limousine.
I think he personifies the unusual situation in Russia where you have this symbiotic relationship among business, government, and crime. And as a result of that, it's difficult to know who the players are, who's wearing what hat at what time. But it also means that somebody who's primarily involved in criminal activities doesn't necessarily perceive them that way. They perceive this as business, and business is sort of on a spectrum of some of it's a little more illegal than others, but it's basically all business. It's just sort of a kind of a rampant or a Wild West kind of capitalism that has not yet been reined in and brought under certain controls, legal controls or others.
Nothing better illustrates this paradox of controlled anarchy than the corruption and farce currently surrounding a scandal that goes to the very top of Russian political life. It touches President Boris Yeltsin and his 2 daughters. It all began with this man, Yuri Skaratov, the powerful Russian federal prosecutor and the man nominally responsible for stamping out Russian organized crime. Skaratov, never far from the headlines, conducted this task as well as he could, but by 1997 he was being overwhelmed. There'd been a series of contract killings of bankers and investigative reporters. Some 13 have been murdered in Russia. The funerals focused world anxiety on what was happening to Russia's fragile freedoms. In response, President Yeltsin summoned Skaratov to the Kremlin. Skaratov was honored, until he realized he was the scapegoat.
Yuri Ilyich, I would like to express my dissatisfaction about the state of your department. Firstly, the leadership of the department is not being conducted in a proper way. The middle and upper ranks of prosecutors are ignoring you and simply not obeying your orders.
Stung by this humiliation, a re-energized Skaratov began investigating a huge scandal involving alleged backhanders for multi-million-dollar cleaning and renovation contracts for the Kremlin and other top government properties in Moscow. The lush contracts have been awarded to this man, the boss of a Swiss company called Magnex. He's denied paying bribes to top people near the Russian presidency in order to get the work. One claim involves an alleged payment of $1 million into a bank account in Budapest believed to be controlled by Yeltsin. Furthermore, Swiss investigators have uncovered credit cards in the names of Yeltsin's two daughters. Russian law forbids citizens from holding foreign accounts. The Kremlin denies all allegations. But investigators in Geneva have now discovered that the cards exist and have actually been used in Switzerland. Furthermore, over 40 Swiss bank accounts are now being examined by magistrates in connection with possible money laundering offences. President Yeltsin himself is above prosecution. His two politically powerful daughters are not. It was the then Swiss federal prosecutor Carla Del Ponte who brought the original tip on the potentially explosive scandal to Moscow earlier this year.
The Swiss prosecution twice informed me of the matter. They provided me with both verbal information and documentary evidence. The prosecutor in charge of the Magnex affair carried out a painstaking examination. I confirmed that the allegations in Switzerland were true.
At this sensitive stage, Skaratov suddenly appeared on television again. A Moscow station showed him flat out on the job, but more informally dressed than usual. Skaratov was brutally compromised on hidden video, a low blow even by Russian standards. He remains deeply embittered. Do you believe you were set up?
There is no doubt that I was the victim of an orchestrated plot.
What has happened to your investigation since your removal?
I have to say that initially, just after I left, the investigation was progressing more or less smoothly. But then, when the Kremlin administration realized the implications of the investigation, it began its attempt to sabotage it, to change the investigator, and ultimately to close the case.
Is it a coincidence that Skaratov was trapped and the film shown publicly at the very time that he's investigating the Magnex affair?
No, it's definitely not a coincidence. I mean, this was the danger. This guy was like a loose cannon. I mean, he was liable to do something that was going to seriously damage the family and seriously damage its standing in the Kremlin and in the government and so on. And this is not cannot be tolerated.
Since these events, Skaratov has been fired by Yeltsin more times than a circus cannon, but Parliament won't endorse the dismissal, so Skaratov remains in place, in limbo and in disgrace. Meanwhile, the Magnex investigation remains stalled. All very neat. As communism bows out, the West's determination to maintain Yeltsin and his fragile democracy has begun to extract a high price. Russia is still experimenting with capitalism, but for many the journey to the promised land is taking too long and there are just too many mountains to climb. The looting of Russia's vast wealth could yet provoke a popular backlash against a criminal elite. Russia's been there before. Semion Mogilevich may have begun to set the fashion for the new Russian bad guy, but that confident swagger could be a front. He knows he's banned from Britain and the United States, while in Budapest government accountants are crawling all over his financial records. Meanwhile, his sworn enemy remains relentless.
I've not given up. I continue to talk to as many of my sources, old sources, new sources, and get that information in the hands of the proper authorities so that the special agents and the investigators can basically build a case.
But even the downfall of the billionaire Don would be a small victory in a war rolling relentlessly west. Russian crime, organized, ruthless, violent and greedy, is on the move. The Russians are coming, and this time there's no wall to hold them back.
Russian organized crime leaders, their members, their associates are moving into Western Europe. They are purchasing property. They are establishing bank accounts. They're establishing companies. They are weaving themselves into the fabric of society. And by the time that Europe develops an awareness, it's going to be too late.
You can comment on the issues raised in tonight's programme by visiting our website at bbc.co.uk/panorama. And next week, the Blair Mayor Project, how Labour is trying to fix who'll be London's mayor.